Good morning, welcome to day 21 of our lockdown, the Coronavirus Diaries of Geriatric 1944. That's me, Jonathan King. A couple of things about coronavirus before I go back to music, because I've been getting loads and loads of messages and comments, mainly sent to my website, www.kingofhits.com, asking me various questions about my music. So I'm going to answer one of those later on. But before I do that, two things. I just saw on BBC Breakfast with the ghastly Victoria Derbyshire, who I cannot stand. She's so patronising and so supercilious. But anyway, she had on a TV producer, Dominic Minghella, the brother of Anthony Minghella, who wrote The English Patient and other things, and also I think was a great director and producer. Dominic got the coronavirus and was quite interesting because he was telling Victoria how when it first started, it was absolutely fine and had no probable serious effects at all. And then after about a week, suddenly it turned rather nasty. And when it turned rather nasty, he decided he had to do something about it, was rushed into hospital, ended up on a ventilator and only just survived. But he was being quite interesting talking about it, and he said, look, the solution is we must stay at home, save lives, protect the NHS. In fact, all the various things that we've been told by politicians and especially media since near the start of the whole lockdown. Now, I really disagree with this. I think we've gone about this in completely the wrong way. Coronavirus is clearly highly infectious. It spreads like no tomorrow. It is like the common cold or influenza, only far, far more infectious and worse in people catching it. But it's also equally, if not more, ineffective on most people. For most people, it has very mild symptoms. They get it and they get over it, as they do the common cold and flu. The only problem is the vulnerable, which of course I am. The elderly, I'm now 75, those with underlying health conditions, I hate that phrase, I'm diabetic type 2, and various other things. Now, I actually suspect that the vulnerable includes smokers or past smokers. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if people who in their teens and 20s had a wonderful time smoking pot, as we used to call it, I don't know what they call it now, marijuana, and all these other things, as well as cigarettes, which I've always loathed and I think are killers. And I think those didn't damage but weakened the lungs. I think what they did was gave a huge pathway for the worst effects of COVID-19 to get into the body. Now, I point out now, I know nothing. I have no medical knowledge whatsoever. This is just my personal suspicion. But if I was actually government and prime minister, or rather dictator of the world, I would concentrating on protecting and treating, especially those vulnerable people. So if somebody was elderly and they had the symptoms of coronavirus and they went into hospital, that the ventilators and the treatment and everything was far more perfected. And that's where all the money in the research was going, and the vaccines as well, to stop them getting it, as it now does with flu, of course. I'd work on those, not the other end of the thing, stopping ordinary people getting it who are just going to get very mild symptoms, as I think I may have done, and who will recover perfectly. I think it's a really serious mistake to go down the road we've gone down, although now we're on it, we might as well go on it till we've got past it and through it. But I think that was the wrong thing to do and is absolutely crippling economically and I think mentally to the world. I think an awful lot of deaths are going to be caused by self-isolation. In fact, I feel like killing myself now. I've been going through it much more than 21 days. I had 2 or 3 weeks beforehand when I thought I had some kind of virus that I was self-isolating. So since the beginning of March, I've been self-isolating. Anyway, enough of that. The only other interesting thing is a graph has appeared about the deaths compared to the population of various countries. and this is really up to date, but I think is rather spurious and a bit odd. For a start, it doesn't include future deaths, and let's face it, places like the UK and the USA are right at the beginning of this, whereas places like Italy and Spain are hopefully coming out of the end of it. So I think A, that makes it odd, and B, where on earth are all the countries in Asia like China and Taiwan, Hong Kong, Australia and all those sort of places that don't seem to be listed at all? So this is a graph which, while interesting, is, I think, misinformation. Anyway, music, as you can see behind me, many a silver, gold, platinum, multi-platinum disc has come my way because I had a very happy and successful time in the music industry. And one of the tracks I've been asked to explain was my version of Sugar Sugar. Sugar Sugar was a huge hit in, I think, the late 60s for Tommy Rowe. Not Tommy Rowe, that was Dizzy, for the Archies, that's right. Sugar Sugar by the Archies. It was what was known as a bubblegum hit. And I remember I was on holiday in Marrakesh in Morocco, and I came up with this idea in 1969 or 70 of redoing the old bubblegum song, but in a sort of progressive rock way. And I came up with this arrangement while walking around the streets of Marrakesh, which is a particularly gorgeous town that I'm still visiting on a regular basis to this day. And actually, I remember exactly the streets I was walking down and the funny little hotel I was staying in when I came up with this idea. Anyway, I came up with this idea to make this really strange, different kind of rock version of this bubblegum song so that I could prove that actually you can take any song if it's a good song and do it in any style if you do it cleverly, and it can be a hit. Well, my one was. It sold, I think, a couple of million around the world. I put it out under the name Saccharin, Sugar Sugar by Saccharin, get it? And it was very much appreciated by the very deeply, possibly rather pretentiously heavy rock fans who thought it was a great work of art by an up-and-coming new group. I remember at the time we were compared to bands like Led Zeppelin, and all it was me having a bit of fun. So I hope you enjoy it too. This has been day 21 of Coronavirus Diaries. See you tomorrow for day 22. Sugar Sugar by Saccharin.